Good morning. Last week in Perek Daled, what we dealt with was the structure of Shlomo HaMelech's government, his advisors, and if you recall, the advisors who were the equivalent of the military chiefs were lower down on the list, meaning that there was a different requirement, a different need in Shlomo HaMelech's time. His time was already a post-war, and whereas David HaMelech had the head of his military at the top, Shlomo HaMelech had him a few steps down. And also we began to deal with the question of the governors that he had over the different regions. And I shared with you Garcia's approach, his explanation that maybe what Shlomo was trying to do is change the structure of the Jewish federation of Shvatim from a David-centered structure to one that was more regional. And it would break down some of those loyalties that were specifically towards Shvatim versus the structure that would be more focused on a central government. This week's Perek continues more in the same concept of Shlomo HaMelech's reign, his rule, his power, and also the question, of course, of his preparations for doing what he needed to do, and that was to build the Beit HaMikdash. And so we start Perek Hey with the phrase, Shlomo haya moshel b'chol ha'mamlachot min hanahar eretz Plishtim v'ad gvul Mitzrayim. Magishim mincha v'odim et Shlomo kol yemei chayav. And Shlomo, in this case, was ruling over all of these monarchies. In the sense, when we talk about Mamlachot, the Medrash Rabbah actually on Esther talks about Shlomo having ruled over the entire world. In fact, the same thing is brought in the Gemara in Megillah, that Shlomo had the whole world under his reign. And because of him having all of those people that he was responsible for, suggests the Malbim, we're going to see the next posuk, and the next posuk is going to talk about the food needs that Shlomo HaMelech had. Now, Mina Nahar, it says Mina Nahar Eretz Plishtim va'ad Gvul Mitzrayim, that from the Nahar to Eretz Plishtim and to the Gvul Mitzrayim. Nahar is always referring to as Nahar Prat. Targum Yonatan says this very clearly, the Euphrates. So in other words, if you think his reign was all the way from where Eretz Yisrael is proper, and all the way east, northeast to the area of Iraq of today, Shlomo HaMelech had all of those pieces under his control, down to Eretz Plishtim, the Gaza Strip, and down to the Nahar Mitzrayim. Now, Gvul Mitzrayim, down to the boundary of Mitzrayim itself. So we're able to really get all of those directions. The Nahar Prat is actually both eastern boundary and also a northern boundary at the same time. And so then we have the western boundary, which is Eretz Plishtim, and a southwestern boundary, which is Mitzrayim itself. And in that area, all of the people would bring mincha v'ovdim et Shlomo kol yemei chayav. They would have to, all of the other monarchies that were under Shlomo's dominion, they were responsible to always bring him the necessary gifts. Those gifts are obviously a form of taxes, and ovdim, which is also at the very same time an idea of a mas oved, of a labor tax. They would have to provide for him people who would work for him. Vayihi lechem Shlomo liyom echad. And now we begin to understand how big his dominion was, because the food needs for a single day for Shlomo was 30 kor solet v'shishim kor kemach. Now, a kor is somewhere between 250 to 412 liters. This is a dry measure. So if you start doing the math, okay, 30 times, and we'll take the smaller measure, 250, okay, that's 7,500 liters, dry measure, just of the fine flour. Solet is always the cleanest, the best flour out there. Mitzudot says this, but we know this from Chumash as well. And it was double the amount of plain flour. So we're talking these massive 22,000 liters of kemach that would be needed. It's hard to even imagine so much, which is where the Malbim goes back to this idea that he wasn't just, this isn't just going to be his own table. These are the responsibilities he had to feed of all of his people, quote unquote. Asara bakar briim, vesrim bakar re'i. And there were 10 oxen that were shechted. These were 10, which were really home-fed, I guess is the best way of saying it. As Targum Yonatan says, Torin de Pitma, that they were fed in the farm-fed. The Esrim Bakar Re'i, and another 20 oxen that were grazing and served. So now we have 30 of them. Umeyatzon, and 100 sheep. Levad me'ayil, utzvi v'yachbor, ubarbarim avusim. Besides the gazelles and the deers, and the yachmor is a kind of a deer. It's called a fallow deer. Okay, and the geese, all of this, it's a massive amount of food that he had. Okay. Yeah, very.
Well, it is a massive amount of food, but to feed the immediate world, it's very little.
He's not feeding the world. He's feeding, in fact, the Abarbanel says the massive amount of food is he's feeding about 60,000 people. That's the cheshbon he has. Most likely, this is not the food that Joe Schmo is eating, who's the farmer. This is the food of people who are, let's say, in the employ or are working directly for Shlomo, would be the way that the Malbim would seem to take it. Now, he had a massive civil corps, if you think about it, because he had the governors everywhere and he had people all over the world that he was responsible for providing. It's really where the Abarbanel is coming from, where the Malbim is coming from, is just trying to understand. You could say on the one hand that this is just meant as exaggeration. But if it's just exaggeration, why is the Navi being so specific on the amounts? Why doesn't it say alfei, something? Just give us, these mass numbers, as opposed to saying, you got 30 of this kind of flour, you have 60 of this kind of flour, you have 20 of this, and you have 10 of this. There must be some reality to these numbers. And so if you have so much food, you have to be able to begin to guess, well, you got to have a lot of people to eat it. And if you have to have a lot of people to eat it, who are these people who are going to be eating it? And the approach is, these were people, not that he's feeding the world. This is not the CARES Act. Okay, this is Shlomo HaMelech actually working, and Shlomo HaMelech taking care of all of his ministries, all of his officers that work for him. Ki hu rodeh b'chol ever hanahar, because he is ultimately ruling. Yeah, Yafa, you're on mute. Yafa, you're on mute. Yafa, you're on mute. I can unmute you. Hold on if you can't.
How do I do that?
Okay. I unmuted you, Yafa.
Oh, okay. All right. So now I lost the meeting, but okay, I'm back. Can you hear me?
We hear you fine. Yes.
Okay, fine. I can't see you, but I'll get you back. I just want to clarify. We had just read in the previous parak about all the administration that he set up through the different administrative districts. And we're now reading about the budget for a single day. Is this therefore being sent out to all the different districts, or is it local inside Yerushalayim?
So the way it's being described by the Malbim, and it would seem to be, it's not just in Eretz Yisrael, it's all of his people around the world. In other words, we went from the previous parak, Eretz Yisrael. Now we're going way out, because we're talking about Nahar Prat, Eretz Mitzrayim, Eretz Plishtim.
So we're saying that this food is therefore being sent by horse and wagon or whatever to even as that far, perhaps, we don't really know.
Perhaps. We don't know. Right. In other words, it doesn't say, the problem is, when you look at this, it doesn't say that this is specifically what he ate in the palace, right? It says the amount of food that he needed for a day. And when you look at the vastness of food, it's hard to imagine that this was the palace needs. It's even hard to imagine this is the needs of Eretz Yisrael, of the people who are responsible for him, because nowhere does it suggest that he's feeding the common folk.
Okay.
Okay. And then to explain it even further, what happens, okay, is ki hu rodeh b'chol ever hanahar, okay, because ultimately he was ruling, and rodeh is a taskmaster in a sense. It really comes from the word to beat. Okay, he is over all of the people of the Ever Nahar. The Ever Nahar is Transjordan. Now, Mitzudot says, okay, is very simply, he was ruling over such a big area, so he had so many people who were so adim mishul chano. They were eating from his table. It doesn't mean they were eating at his table, but he was responsible for providing for them. Now, interestingly, where is he going? Mitivsach ve'ad Aza. The area which he was responsible for was the area of Tifsach to Aza. According to the Gemara in Sanhedrin, there's a machloket Rav and Shmuel. And this actually parallels a machloket we find also in the beginning of Megillat Esther on Achashverosh's Mihodu Viad Kush, as the exact same machloket. Rav says that these were two places that were very far from one another. Tifsach, for example, according to the Dat Mikra, is a city that's on the Euphrates, all the way far northeast, whereas Aza, we know where Gaza is. So on the one hand, because he was ruling from really far to really far, he had this massive area. Shmuel in the Gemara, and this is on Daf Chaf Amud Bet in Sanhedrin, Shmuel says no. He was ruling, he had control over all of his areas, just like you would have from Tifsach to Aza. There were two cities that were basically adjacent to one another. Just like you can have control over a small area, Shlomo HaMelech had control over the massive areas that he had. B'chol malchei Ever Nahar. He was responsible in all of this area in the Ever HaNahar. V'shalom hayalo mikol avarav misaviv. And he had absolute peace at that moment when he was ruling. We'll see a little bit later that it wasn't so absolute. But at this moment, where we're describing what he had accomplished, it was peaceful. So he had control, he had responsibility, and he had massive areas of districts that he was over, beyond the Jewish areas. Vayeshev Yehuda v'Yisrael lavetach, ish tachat kafno v'tachat te'enato, and the Jewish people sat in security under their vines and under their fig trees, midan ve'ad Beersheva, from the north into the south, kol yemei Shlomo, all of the days of Shlomo HaMelech. So in this sense, Shlomo had these responsibilities. He had all these people bringing him the gifts, but everything was peaceful. Even though we're going to see that in Perek Yud Aleph, we're going to hear about Razon, who is one of his enemies, and Razon really wasn't a player, and Razon was an enemy of his, but here we're talking about Kol Yemei Chayav, in a sense, for the majority, not every moment of his life, but all from the majority of his life, and that's how the Abarbanel resolves that. Vayihi Shlomo lishlomo 40,000 urvot susim lemerkavo. And Shlomo HaMelech had 40,000 stables for his horses, for his chariots. Now, we do have one problem here, and in Divrei Hayamim, I'm just looking to see if I have my Tanakh here, excuse me a moment. And if any of you have a Divrei Hayamim, in Divrei Hayamim Bet, Perek Tet, remember Divrei Hayamim is already about Shlomo, and Perek Tet, in Divrei Hayamim, Pasuk Chafhei, says the following. Vayehi l'Shlomo 4,000 uryot, susim u'merkavot, that Shlomo had 4,000. So we have a little bit of a problem. We have Divrei Hayamim that reports 4,000, and we have Melachim Aleph that reports the fact that there were 40,000. So how do you resolve it? So there are classic approaches to this. Before we get to the classic approaches, the Dat Mikra has a very simple approach. It's talking about two different times in Shlomo HaMelech's history. There was a period of time where he had 40,000. There was a period of time where he had 4,000. And this is just simple, nice and easy. However, the classic Meforshim, starting with Rashi, Rashi says he had 40,000 stables, and in each one of those stables, there were 4,000 places for horses. So the number of horses he had was extraordinary. The Abarbanel says he had 40,000 horses, which were kept in 4,000 stables. And the Kliyakar says he had 40,000 stables in Eretz Yisrael, and he had 4,000 in Yerushalayim alone. So the way we resolve this is by saying they're talking possibly about two different things or a combination of things. This, of course, if you remember in the Chumash, it says, Lo yarbelo susim, not just you can't have a lot of wives, you also can't have a lot of horses. Part of the issue is not to go back to Mitzrayim. It's complicated. This is not mentioned because as we've talked about before in Tanakh, when you start seeing negative reactions, then you start knowing that what was done was wrong. Right now, this is non-judgmental. It is, again, just showing the vastness of his standing army, even at a time of peace. וחילקלו הניצבים האלה את המלך שלמה ואת כל הקרב אל שולחן המלך שלמה איש חודשו, לא יעדרו דבר. And then we talk about the idea that all of the 12 different governors, we actually said there were 13 if you count Yehuda, according to one explanation, that all of these various governors, that what would happen is that they would continue to provide for the table of Shlomo. The Abarbanel interestingly says that the table of Shlomo doesn't mean literally his table, because kings ate at their own table. Think for a moment, what's it called? The sweetheart table that a chosin kala have at the chasen. The king had his own table. It wasn't b'kovadik to have other people at his table. But it was the people he was responsible for within the palace. So his personal needs were being provided for without question by those different nitzavim, the different people he had put in place. The addition to that, he also had, if you remember, all of the taxes that were coming in from outside. And all of this was happening. And also, the people, these different governors in these different regions, were providing all of the things that he needs for his horses. They were delivered. There was a perfect delivery system, even better than we have today with Amazon. They brought it, and they brought it on time. They didn't say we'll get it to you in the next 3 weeks. Vayiten Elokim, Posuk Tet, Chochma l'Shlomo, and God gave that wisdom, as he had promised him all along, okay, to Shlomo. The Malbim says, wait a second, we already knew he gave him the wisdom. That's 2 prakim ago. So why does it have to say it now? So according to the Malbim, he says, actually, he gave him additional wisdom above and beyond the wisdom that he needed to run the nation. He gave him more. Utfunar bemot, v'rochav lev kechol asher al sfat hayam, and he gave him a broad heart, like would be the sand of the sea. Now, broad hearts, remember, hearts in Tanakh is wisdom. The heart is the seat, not of emotion in Tanakh. The heart is the seat of the intellect. And he gave him that ability to be able to deal with all of that wisdom, like the sands of the sea. There are, as we know, there are very, very bright people who can be stupid. They know a lot, but they're not capable of using all of that knowledge. There's a combination. They have chokhmah. They might not have tfunah. But even if they have the understanding, the knowledge and the understanding, Then what they still need is that ability to be able to integrate all of it and put it all together. For those of you who are in education, if you start thinking of Bloom's taxonomy, cognitive taxonomy, this is really the same kind of thing that we find within the Tanakh, where we talk about different levels. The lowest level is cognition, if you remember. After that comes knowledge, okay? I'm sorry, knowledge and understanding. I'm sorry, did it wrong. Knowledge, understanding, chokhmah, binah, and then the highest level is evaluation. All of those different kinds of things is what this pasuk is talking about. The Shlomo HaMelech had it all. He just wasn't a computer. He had the ability to use it all. Vaterev chokhmat Shlomo mi chokhmat kol bnei Kedem umikol chokhmat Mitzrayim. And Shlomo had more wisdom than the people of the East and the wise men of Egypt. Why the people of Kedem and the people of Egypt? Those were considered the two great centers of civilization. Mesopotamia, that's Kedem. Mitzrayim is Egypt. So all of a sudden, these two great empires and two great seats of wisdom couldn't compare it to Shlomo HaMelech. Vayachkam mikol ha'adam, and he was wiser than any person. Now, any person could have said mikol adam. Why does it say mikol ha'adam? And so there, the Yalkut Shimoni and Rashi quotes and talks about that he was wiser even than the Adam. Who is the Adam? Adam HaRishon, the person who was first created, who was in relationship directly with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And he was wiser, Me'etan ha'ezrachi, Veheman, Vechalkol, Vedardar, B'nei Mechol, and he was wiser than these four people. Who were these four people? The four people, Mitzvot says they were known as the very, very wise people of their time. You know, if you think about it now, when you talk about somebody who's really smart, you say he's smarter than Einstein or something of that nature. These people were known as the most brilliant people of his time, and the Tanakh says he was even smarter than them. Shloshet alafim mashal, and he said 3,000 parables by Hishiro Chamisha ve'elef. And he said also his songs were 5 and 1,000. Now, the problem is, again, we know Shlomo HaMelech as the author of a number of Sfarim. We have Shlomo HaMelech as the author of Mishlei. We have Shlomo HaMelech as the author of Kohelet, and we have Shlomo HaMelech as the author of Shir HaShirim. But how does all of this description here fit into what we know? First of all, there are not 3,000 Mishalim in Mishlei. Okay, so the Radak says very simply, okay, we lost a lot of them. That before Galut, we had many, many more Mishalim of Shlomo HaMelech. We've lost them because of the Galut. The Ralbag says, no, that actually we didn't lose them. We just kept the best ones. Or as he says, the ones that we kept were the ones that were needed for all generations, that have eternity to them, which was always a measure of what's considered important to be kept in Tanakh. That was the bellwether of what would be a Sefer Tanakh if it had something of eternal value. Okay, that was the question which we've had. Whether it was about Shir HaShirim was the classic question. Even the question with Mordechai and Esther fought with the Anshe Knesset Hagdolah when they said, Kitvuni l'Dorot. I want this to be an eternal book. I don't want this just to be a moment in time. And they had to present why this would be of eternal significance. Says Rashi, though, that actually, if you look at the words, what it really means is Vayishiro Chamisha va'alef. Aleph in this case does not mean necessarily 1,000, but he had 5 that were extraordinary. So what was it in? In Mishlei, there are 3 times where it is introduced as Mishlei Shlomo. The beginning of Mishlei, which is in Perek Aleph, Pasuk Aleph. In Perek Yud, Pasuk Aleph, there's a new introduction all over again. And in Perek Chafei, Pasuk Aleph, there's a new introduction all over again. It's as if there are 3 books. In that kind of case, there were 5 books that he had. The 5 books were ultimately the 3 of Mishle, Kohelet, and Shir Hashirim. So what it would mean, according to the way Rashi would take it, he gave 1,000 different Mishalim. We don't have them all. Why we don't have them all? Okay, you got the Ralbag, you have the Radak. And then Shiro, he had Chamisha. There were 5 books of his writings, of his Shira. Aleph, and they were extraordinary books in that case. Aleph is a word, okay, like you have even nowadays when you have in military, the aluf, right, is the general. It doesn't mean he's the 1,000. He's the aluf, he's the exceptional, the extraordinary one, the leader, and the same kind of thing in this pasuk. Vayedaber al ha'etzim min ha'erez asher b'Lebanon, and Shlomo HaMelech spoke about trees, from the cedars of Lebanon, v'ad ha'ezov, and until the ezov, the hyssop, asher yotzei bakir, which comes out of the walls. We've said this before. If you want to know what a hyssop is, look at the kotel. Those green things coming out of it is ezov that's coming out of the walls. What does it mean he spoke about? Well, what Rashi explains is that he understood botany. And so he spoke about how to heal, how to, trees that were no longer healthy, how to take care of them. And in the same sense, he understood all about animals and all about birds, and all about those things that crawl, and all about all of the fish. Rashi says the simple thing was he knew what was kosher and what wasn't. Okay, he knew all of the simanim. Okay, and according to a second explanation, which Rashi quotes from Bamidbar Rabbah, he knew why this animal was considered kosher and why this animal was not considered kosher. Unlike where we had before the Medrash, if you recall, when he first gets the Chokhmah, and how does he know he's got Chokhmah? Is because he hears the birds talking, and he understands all of a sudden animals, their conversation. Here in this pasuk, because when it says that he could speak on the trees or about the trees, it wasn't that he was talking to trees. Here, if he's talking about the trees, meaning he knows about trees, and so you have that same phrase, so it must have something similar to it. He knows about those things as well. And everybody came from all of the nations of the world to see the wisdom of Shlomo. And he had greater wisdom than all of the kings of the land, asher shamu et chokhmato, who heard of his wisdom. Now comes,
So it makes sense to me that we're talking about the wisdom of Shlomo, that he understands botany, he understands animals, and he probably understands all this in order to give chachma, in order to understand Torah. You know what I'm saying? Like, all of that makes sense to me in a Judaic sense, in a religious sense. Why do we have to know about his 40,000 horses and how people had to feed his 40,000 horses? To me, that's a gnai, not a shevach.
No, you see, well, on the other hand, I would say like this. If we want to understand his influence, his power, and even the idea of how others serve him, then you start talking about these beautiful things. Look, to take it to an extreme of starting with next parak, we believe that the way things appear have significance. So, for example, we have a choice. Right now, well, let's take a simple example. We're going to talk about the Beit HaMikdash in the next parak. Okay, and there's gold and silver and all sorts of magnificent embroidery. Why don't we just go with something pashut? Hey, Tamim Tiyem Hashem Elokecha. Okay, be simple. Why do we need all of these beautiful things? Because they convey message. Because human beings, and this is what we talked about on another occasion as well, human beings operate on 3 planes. We operate in the sense of thought, of speech, and of action. And all of the things that we do have to take into account, human emotion and human feeling. Behind me is that picture of our main sanctuary, okay, which, please God, one day we'll get back to soon. When you think about it, when we go into a shul, there's different feelings when you walk into a shul. If you walk into a shul that's in a basement that is just very utilitarian, it's a different feeling than when you walk into a place of grandeur. And we respond to those kinds of things. So here we're telling about Shlomo, we're saying to Shlomo, look, Shlomo, first of all, you were the wisest of all men. We see how that's played out, and we even see how it plays out in terms of international relations. Everybody comes to you. You are the center of the world. We also see how it plays out in terms of your power. You have armies, you have horses, you have chariots. You're going to have this massive wealth, and that's important.
Is that what the horses are representing? Is his army? Because we don't hear about his. Well, we don't hear about his castles. We don't hear about his.
Well, actually, no. We're going to hear about his palace. He's going to build his palace. First, he has to build the Beit HaMikdash, but he does build a palace as well, and we're going to hear about the magnificence of his palace as well. So all of that's real. Yafa had a point, yeah.
I just want to reinforce what you're saying is that he inherited, apparently, this huge kingdom from David, because he didn't make war, he inherited it. The question is, how do you administrate it so that nobody rebels? And so you have to have the horsepower, literally, to run back and forth and put people on notice that everything is being watched and administered and so on.
Well, I would ask, though, the fun part to consider, for the fun part to consider on this is, why does he need it? Why don't you just say, hey, let me have my little Eretz Yisrael, and I don't need all these other kingdoms.
But he got it from David. David did that, and was basically, was it not to ensure the security of Eretz Yisrael itself?
Yeah,
was that it?
Right, it's a security measure. It is a security measure. It was response. There were milchamot that were allowed to expand the boundaries, and all of these things are good. In other words, going back to Shoshi's point, we don't view wealth as something bad. We view the way you use your wealth as good or bad. The fact that he had the wealth and the power is not a pejorative. We're not, we believe the wealth and power can be good or can be bad.
And it serves like a nuclear deterrent. You want to have the power just to deter, not to use.
Alita, you have a point?
Yeah, well, wasn't the horses in the end a bad thing? That we're not supposed to have that? I mean,
right.
So maybe this is, I'm just saying that maybe he's saying that we had the horses and we had all this other stuff, but doesn't mean that the horses were good.
Well, again, I'm going to use the general principle that when something is mentioned in Tanakh, we want to know if it's good or bad. Let's see if there's a reaction to it. There's no reaction at this point. This is all contained within a list, and the Navi doesn't show up and blast him for having the horses.
Right.
So as a result, I'm not going to say it's bad if the Tanakh doesn't say it's bad.
Right.
It's more an expression of wealth and power than anything else. And again, how we even try to, if you think about it for a moment, even the way Rashi, based on a medrash, tries to explain the 4,000 and the 40,000, and he multiplies them basically. That's just a hyperbole of power. I can't even imagine that number of horses, but that's possible that it's a literal. Mm-hmm. Now we get into what we're going to be shifting for a moment. And now we're going to start talking actually the precursor to the building of the Beit HaMikdash and of the palace. And all of a sudden, who's going to come in? Vayishlach Hiram melech Tzor et avadav el Shlomo. Hiram, who is the king of Tyre, which is along the north of the Mediterranean, he sends his servants over to Shlomo, ki shamau tom mashchu lemelech tachat avihu. Because he heard that Shlomo now is the heir to the David's throne, because there was this relationship of friendship that had happened between Hiram and David. It was even in the time where David was going to war. And he sends these people, and the reason he's sending him is to help him. Vayishlach Shlomo el Hiram lemor. So Shlomo responds to this gesture. You know my father, Ki lo yachol livnot bayit l'shem Hashem Elokav mipnei hamilchama asher svav. That he wasn't able to build the Beit HaMikdash because of the wars that surrounded him. He was in the middle of all the wars. Interestingly, we're really not sure. It's a careful use of language, because if you remember from Divrei Yamim, it said the reason why David HaMelech couldn't build it because he had blood on his hands. Where the blood on his hands was from the wars that he had to do. Shlomo HaMelech is telling the absolute truth, but not really. And the Radak picks up on it. He says he didn't want to say that David, his father, didn't build it for any other reason. He wanted to make it sound like his father would have not only loved to build it, he just couldn't build it, even though there was a point where David felt he could build it. So he didn't want to do anything that would come off as reflecting bad on David. So he uses this phrasing, Ad teit Hashem otam tachat kapot raglav, until Hashem gave the raglai. I'm sorry, until Hashem gave them to me to rule over. Really, it wasn't Shlomo the one who God gave him. God gave him to David. He's changing a little bit of the timeline so that his father should come out without any claims against him. Vatam, and now, Hiniach Hashem Elokai li misaviv. God has given me peace from all around me. Ein Satan ve'ein pega ra. There is no Satan and there's no pega ra. A Satan, says the Abarbanel, is an enemy within. A pega ra is an enemy from without. I have no problem inside or outside. The Dat Mikra disagrees. The Dat Mikra suggests Satan is a person who is a consistent enemy, an oyev matmid, versus the pegara is a mikre, is someone who just kind of pops in and out of the picture. Whichever way it is, Shlomo HaMelech is telling Hiram, now it's peaceful. I can do things. V'hineni omer livnot bayit l'shem Hashem Elokai. And I now am saying I want to build the Beit HaMikdash. Kasher diber Hashem el David, Avi more like he said to David, Bincha asher ten tachtecha al kisecha hu yivnei bayit l'shmi. Just like he had told my father, and we know that this was the case, he told my father, your son's going to build it. V'yatam. And therefore now. Tzaveh vayichritu li arazim min halvanon. Put out the command, and cut down for me trees from Lebanon. Vavadai yu im avadecha, and my servants will work alongside yours. Uschar avadecha aten lecha, and I will pay for your laborers kechol asher tomar, whatever you say it is. Ki ata yadata, because you know, ki ein banu ish yodea lichrot etzim ketzidonim, because you know that the people of Tyre are the experts in how to harvest lumber. Now, the interesting piece here, we have two issues, and we'll see this happen later on also when describing the Beit HaMikdash. Where is the Lebanon? Okay, the Lebanon could be talking about Lebanon, north of Eretz Yisrael. But also there was an area within Eretz Yisrael that was called the Lebanon. And as a result, what is he really asking for? So according to the Radak, all he's asking for is just the people to help him cut down the trees and harvest the lumber. It's all in Eretz Yisrael. According to the Mitzudot, he says, no, he's asking Hiram for the cedars of Lebanon, literally of Lebanon. Both are cedars of Lebanon, but Lebanon is Michutz La'aretz. What's interesting, though, in his request is he's not just requesting the lumber. He wants his people to work alongside Hiram's people. Why? Because by working alongside Hiram's people, his people are going to learn this malacha. They'll be able to become independent. He has all the wisdom of the world. Shlomo HaMelech can talk to the animals, and he knows how to feed them, and he knows which ones are kosher, he knows how to heal trees. He's missing just one art. And as a result, he's sending his people alongside with Hiram to take care of that at the very same time. Vayehi ki shmoa Hiram et divrei Shlomo vayismach mod. And when Hiram hears that Shlomo needs him, he was very happy to do this. Why? Because he wants to do something. He wants to be part of this process. He feels this affinity to David HaMelech still. Vayomer Baruch Hashem Hayom Asher Natan LeDavid Ben Chacham Al Ha'am Harav Hazeh. And he praises him. Okay? That he praises him to go ahead and to be able to do something so wise. What is the something so wise? He's asking for more than he might have thought would be asked from before. According to the approach that he's asking to have his own people learn, that's also something. And he's happy about it. He says, listen, I heard what you want. And he has said, I'm going to do everything you want, not just what you're asking for, but everything you want. I'm not just going to do it with the cedars. I'm also going to do it with the junipers. Now, these are two different kinds of wood. Shlomo only asked for the cedars. However, Hiram understands that these two different kinds of woods are useful for two different purposes. And that if he's really going to build this magnificent Beit HaMikdash, he can use both kinds of wood, and he's going to prepare for him both kinds of wood. Cedar is a very, very hard wood. A brosh is a little bit of a softer wood, easier to carve and do other things with it. Avadai yoridu min Levanon yama. And my servants, what they're going to do is they're going to take it from the area of Lebanon, and to transport it to you, they're going to transport it over the sea. ואני אסמם דוברות בים עד המקום אשר תשלח אליי, וניפצתם שם, ואתה תיסע. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to build rafts from this wood. Rashi says, rafsodot. Modern Hebrew, we still use it as the word for a raft. I'm going to take all this wood, I'm going to make it into rafts, and when you tell me where you want it, what I'm going to do is then I'm going to break down the rafts, and you'll have the wood, ואתה תיסע, ואתה תעשה את חפצי. Latet lechem beiti, and you'll do what I need to be able to provide for me the food to sustain my house. In other words, you offer to pay for it, you're going to take care of that payment. Vayehi Hiram noten li Shlomo atzer azim v'atzev roshim kol chevtzo, and he gave him all the wood he needed. Ushlomo natan leChiram, and Shlomo gave back to Hiram 20,000 kor chitim makolet leveito. He gave him 20,000 kor. Now again, a kor, let's say the minimum is 250 liter of a dry measure. Again, vast amount, which also shows the produce of Eretz Yisrael was something extraordinary at that time to be able to support of that. He gave him all of that. This word, by the way, you see, makolet. I think this is the place in Tanakh where the word makolet comes from. All of us know what a makolet now is in a modern Hebrew. Is like the little grocery stores around the corner. Makolet is actually ma'achelet, as if it's from the word lechol. Okay, makolet leveito, vesrim kor shemen katit, and he also gave him 20 kor, which again, let's say it's about 5,000 liter of olive oil. And this was given for as long as Hiram was helping out with the building of the Beit HaMikdash. This was the annual fee that he paid. One more time, he said he's giving him this chokhmah. Now, until now, what he's had is, he's had a sense of chokhmah to be able to manage the government. He has had a chokhmah over all of the economic issues, and now he is gaining the chokhmah over the issue of the building of the Beit HaMikdash. All of them are different areas of wisdom and expertise, and you have to say something like that, because otherwise it's redundant. It's got to be something, some kind of additional chokhmah that's happening here. Vayihi shalom ben Hiram uben Shlomo v'yichrutu v'rit shnehem, and there was a peace agreement between the two of them. Vayal hamelech Shlomo mas mikol Yisrael. Now Shlomo goes ahead, and he places over the Jewish people a tax. Vayehi Hamas 30,000 ish. And it's a labor tax that was necessary. Okay, this was, the classic kind of tax. Just to go back, the first experience we have with it is Mitzrayim. Okay, how was it that that Paro was able to enslave the Jewish people? Because foreigners had labor taxes all the times imposed on them. We saw it earlier in this parak. We see it now being placed upon the Jewish people. And there are 30,000 men involved in this project. Vayishlachem levonana 10,000 b'chodesh chalifot, chodesh yu b'Levanon, 2 chodeshim b'veito, v'adon iram alamas. And what he did with these 30,000 men is the 30,000 men worked in shifts. They worked 1 month, they were off 2 months. In other words, you had 10,000 at a shot who would go up there. They would go, they would work, and then they'd have 2 months off. And meantime, you'd constantly having this flow of people being able to go to the Lebanon to work, 10,000 at a shot. Vayehi l'Shlomo 70,000 nosei sabal. And in addition to that, Shlomo had 70,000 people who were porters. Those 70,000 people actually are made up of Gerim, of the non-Jews. And there is Ushmonim-elef chotzev bahar. And there were also 80,000 masons. So he had a total, and this in fact, Divrei Yomim Bet talks about this, there were 150,000 people who were working as well. He had 30,000 in the lumber, 150,000 between porter and masons. Levad misarei hanitzavim l'Shlomo asher ala hamelacha 3,300 harodim ba'am ha'osim b'melacha. In addition to 3,300 people from Klal Yisrael, who were also the taskmasters. I don't mean this in the negative, but in just a parva sense, without any value placed. They were responsible. They were the supervisors. And at the same time, there were 300 who were responsible over the mimunim. In other words, you had 3,300 who were direct middle management, and over them you had another 300 managing that.
Rabbi, how do we know they were Gerim?
That's based on the Divrei Yomim piece.
Oh, okay.
Then Vayitzav HaMelech Vayasiu Avanim Gedolot Avanim Yekarot Liyaseh Bayit Avnei Gazit. And then they began to bring these large stones, the hewn stones, to be able to create the foundation. Vayivselu Bonei Shlomo Bonei Chiram V'hagivlim V'yachinu ha'etzim v'avanim livnot habayit. And they went ahead, and all of these people were carving, and they began to create the wood and the stones that would be able to use for the building of the bayit. We will see in terms of the building of the Beit HaMikdash that the way it was built, the walls were not exclusively stone, they were stone with wood. In fact, we also know nowadays, and this is one of the things they know about the pyramids, and they also have the same suggestion about some of the Kotel walls itself, that they used wooden rollers to be able to roll the stones into place, and then they burnt the wooden rollers out from between the stones, and the stones settled down. We have actually nowadays archaeological evidence for that. So when this pasuk talks about ha'etzim va'avanim livnot et habayit, it doesn't necessarily mean the wood that was going to be used as paneling, but it can be the wood that's used as part of the walls themselves, and we'll see those details starting with next week. We have finished today, Parak Hey. Next week, we're actually going to get into the real building of the Beit HaMikdash. And Yafa, you had a question.
We have introduced in verse Lamed Beis 32, Hagivlim.
Yes. We're going to have more. We're going to have. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. What?
We did not hear about them before.
Yes, we're going to hear about them more as the time goes on. The Givlim is talking about the people who are going to be Gival. They're talking about, they're from the city. There was a Canaanite city called Gival. These are specific artisans who were really the experts on this level of building.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, same time, same place. Next week, I think it's after Yom Tov already. Wow.
9 o'clock.
9 o'clock regular time. Yes, thank you. 9 o'clock next week.
Mazel tov to you. Mazel tov, Margaret.
Thank you. Thank you.